He checked his bank account. $12.40. That was all Ethan had to his name on Christmas Eve. He thought he was walking into a blind date that could change his life, a chance to finally give his 5-year-old daughter a mother figure. Instead, he walked into a humiliation so brutal it left him shaking in the snow. But just as he turned to leave, defeated and broken, a limousine door opened, and a woman he had never met stepped out with a question that would shatter his reality. "I saw what just happened. I don't need a date, and you don't need pity. But if you marry me tonight, I'll give you $5 million. This is the story of how the worst night of Ethan's life became the beginning of a dangerous, romantic, and twist-filled lie. The wind on Fifth Avenue didn't just blow, it bit. It gnawed through the fabric of Ethan Carter's wool coat, a coat he'd bought 6 years ago when he was still a respected junior architect, before the medical bills, before the funeral, and before the grief swallowed his career whole. "Daddy, my toes are spicy," 5-year-old Lily whispered, squeezing his hand. Spicy was her word for hurting. Ethan looked down. Lily was wearing her best dress, a red velvet thing she'd outgrown 2 months ago. Her tights had a small run near the ankle, and her boots were cheap knockoffs that leaked freezing slush. "We're almost there, Lil Bit," Ethan said, his voice tight. "Just a little further. We're going to meet a friend of Aunt Jessica's. She's nice." He prayed she was nice. Jessica, his older sister, had practically begged him to go. "Her name is Sarah," Jessica had said. "She works in PR. She knows about Lily. She says she loves kids. Ethan, you've been alone for 3 years. Just buy her a coffee and see what happens." Bravo. They arrived at Le Miroir. It wasn't a coffee shop. It was a bistro with a valet out front and a menu in the window that didn't list prices. Ethan's stomach dropped. He had $40 in his wallet and $12 in the bank. He touched the credit card in his pocket, the one that was maxed out, hoping it wouldn't be declined if he just ordered an appetizer. "Reservation for Sarah Jenkins," Ethan told the maitre d', trying to hide his scuffed shoes behind the host stand. The maitre d' looked at Ethan, then at the child, his nose wrinkling slightly. "This way." Sarah was already seated. She was stunning, with sharp cheekbones and hair the color of expensive champagne. She was scrolling on her phone, looking bored. When Ethan approached, she looked up, her smile practiced, until her eyes landed on Lily. The smile vanished. It didn't fade. It was deleted. "Ethan?" she asked, her voice icy. "Hi, Sarah, I'm Ethan. And this is—" "Why is there a child here?" Sarah interrupted, loud enough for the table next to them to turn around. Ethan pulled out a chair for Lily. "My babysitter cancelled last minute. It's Christmas Eve. Everyone is booked. Jessica said you liked kids, so I thought." "I like kids in theory, Ethan. I like my nieces when I can give them back after an hour," Sarah snapped. She didn't offer a hand to shake. She pointed a manicured finger at Lily. "I didn't sign up for a playdate. This is supposed to be a date, adult conversation, wine, romance, not babysitting." Lily shrank into her chair, clutching her worn-out stuffed rabbit. "Mr. Hops, I'll be quiet," she whispered. "She's very well behaved," Ethan said, his defensive instincts flaring. "We can just have a quick drink. I just wanted to meet you." Sarah sighed, a dramatic, suffering sound. "Fine, sit." The waiter arrived. Sarah ordered a Pinot Noir and the lobster bisque without looking at the price. Ethan ordered a water for himself and a hot chocolate for Lily. "So," Sarah said, looking at Ethan's frayed cuffs, "Jessica said you used to be an architect. What do you do now?" "I work construction," Ethan said. "Foreman. It pays the bills." It didn't, actually. Not with the debts his late wife's cancer treatment had left behind. "Construction," she repeated, the word tasting like vinegar in her mouth. "So you get your hands dirty." "It's honest work. It's blue collar," she corrected. "I'm looking for someone who can match my ambition, Ethan. I'm up for a VP role next month. I need a partner who fits the image. A construction worker with a—" She gestured vaguely at Lily. "An anchor tied to his ankle? It's not the vibe." Lily reached for her hot chocolate. Her small hands were still cold and shaking. She tipped the mug. It happened in slow motion. The brown liquid sloshed over the rim and splashed onto the white tablecloth, a few drops hitting Sarah's sleeve. Sarah shrieked. It was a high, piercing sound that silenced the restaurant. "You clumsy little brat!" Sarah yelled, jumping up and dabbing at her sleeve. "This is silk. Do you have any idea how much this costs?" "I'm sorry." Lily started to cry. Ethan stood up, his face burning. "Don't yell at her. It was an accident. I'll pay for the cleaning." "You?" Sarah scoffed, her laugh cruel and loud. "You can't even afford to fix your own shoes, Ethan. I saw them when you walked in. You're broke. You're a widower with baggage and no future. Honestly, Jessica was out of her mind setting us up. You're pathetic." She threw her napkin onto the table. "I'm leaving, and you're paying for the wine I didn't get to drink." Sarah stormed out, her heels clacking like gunshots. Ethan stood there, the center of attention. The waiter approached, stone-faced, dropping the check on the table. $45. He opened his wallet. He put all the cash he had on the table. It was $3 short. "Sir," the waiter said, loud enough for the room to hear, "this is insufficient." Ethan closed his eyes. I can go to an ATM." "I got it." The voice came from the booth behind them. A woman stood up. She was tall, wearing a black trench coat that looked like it cost more than Ethan's car. She had dark hair and eyes that looked like shattered glass, sharp and dangerous. She threw a $100 bill onto Ethan's table. "Keep the change," she told the waiter. Then she looked at Ethan. "Grab your daughter. Walk with me." Ethan didn't argue. He grabbed Lily's hand, wrapped her coat tighter around her, and followed the stranger out into the biting cold. Outside, the snow had picked up. A sleek, black Rolls-Royce was idling at the curb. The woman stopped next to it and turned to face him. Under the street lamp, Ethan saw she was younger than he thought, maybe 28, but she carried herself with the weary authority of a general. "I'm Ethan," he stammered. "Look, I'll pay you back. Give me your number, and next week when I get paid—" "I don't want your $40, Ethan," she said. Her breath plumed in the air. "I want your name." "Excuse me?" "My name is Vanessa Sterling," she said. Ethan froze. Sterling, as in Sterling Heavy Industries. Real estate, shipping, tech. They owned half the skyline he used to help design. "I was sitting behind you," Vanessa continued, her voice brisk and businesslike. "I heard everything. You're a widower, you're broke, you were an architect, and you're a devoted father who just took a bullet for his kid. If you're looking for charity cases to feel better about yourself on Christmas, we're fine," Ethan said, bristling. He picked Lily up. She was shivering. "I'm not charitable. I'm desperate," Vanessa said. She took a step closer. "My father, Harrison Sterling, is dying, or so he says. He's threatening to hand over the company to my stepmother's son, my idiot stepbrother, Grant, unless I'm married by New Year's Eve. It's an archaic clause in my grandfather's trust. I have to be settled to inherit the controlling stake." Ethan stared at her. "What does this have to do with me?" "Grant is trying to set me up with one of his business partners, a man who makes my skin crawl," Vanessa said, her eyes flashing with genuine fear for a second before the steel wall went back up. "I need a husband, fast, someone who can't be bought by my family, someone who needs me as much as I need them." She looked at Lily, who had her face buried in Ethan's neck. "I need a fake husband for 1 year, Vanessa stated. "We get married legally. We live in my penthouse. You attend galas, smile for the cameras, and pretend to adore me. In exchange—" She pulled a checkbook out of her purse. She uncapped a fountain pen. "In exchange, I pay off your debts. All of them." I pay for the best private school in the city for your daughter, and at the end of the year, I give you $2 million cash." The wind howled, but Ethan couldn't hear it. He could only hear his own heart hammering against his ribs. "You're insane," he whispered. "I'm practical," she countered. "You're a good father, Ethan. I saw how you looked at her. You're drowning. I can see that, too. That woman inside treated you like trash because you're poor. Imagine if you could walk back in there and buy the whole restaurant. I'm offering you dignity." Ethan looked at Lily's wet boots. He thought about the foreclosure notice sitting on his kitchen counter. He thought about the cold apartment. Is it safe for Lily?" he asked. "My home is a fortress. She'll have everything she ever wanted. I promise you, I will protect her with my life. I just need you to protect my legacy." Vanessa held out the check. She had already written it. It was a check for $50,000. "This is just a signing bonus for tonight, to get you warm clothes and a hotel room that isn't freezing." Ethan looked at the check. Then he looked at Vanessa's eyes. He didn't see malice. He saw a woman who was just as cornered as he was. He reached out and took the check. "1 year?" he asked. "1 year," Vanessa agreed. "Can you be my husband, Ethan?" "For her," Ethan said, kissing the top of Lily's head, "I'll be whatever you need." The next 48 hours were a blur of tailors, lawyers, and non-disclosure agreements. Ethan and Lily were moved out of their crumbling apartment in Queens and into the sterling penthouse in Manhattan. It was a world of glass and steel floating above the clouds. Lily had her own room, filled with more toys than she had ever seen. For the first time in years, Ethan slept in a bed that didn't squeak, though he slept alone. Vanessa's room was on the other side of the East Wing. The wedding was a courthouse affair. Quick, clinical, no guests. But the introduction to the family was the real test. It was Christmas Day dinner at the Sterling estate in the Hamptons. The driveway was filled with Bentleys and Ferraris. Ethan adjusted his new tuxedo. It fit perfectly, hugging his broad shoulders, making him look like the architect he used to be, not the laborer he had become. "Remember," Vanessa whispered as they stood before the massive oak doors. "We met 6 months ago at a gallery. You didn't know who I was. We fell in love fast. You're not a construction worker. You're an independent consultant." She reached out and took his hand. Her hand was cold, trembling slightly. Ethan squeezed it. "I got you," he said softly. "Just breathe." Vanessa looked up at him, surprised by his strength. For a second, the mask slipped. "Thank you," she whispered. The doors opened. The dining room was vast, lit by a crystal chandelier that probably cost more than Ethan's lifetime earnings. At the head of the table sat Harrison Sterling, hooked up to an oxygen tank, but looking sharp-eyed and vicious. Next to him was Camilla, the stepmother, a woman who looked like she was made of wax and venom, and Grant, the stepbrother. Grant stood up, swirling a glass of scotch. He was handsome in a slimy way, wearing a velvet smoking jacket. "Well, well," Grant sneered. "The prodigal daughter returns, and she brought a guest." "Not a guest," Vanessa announced, lifting her chin. She raised her hand, showing off the massive diamond ring, which she had bought for herself. "Father, Camilla, Grant, I'd like you to meet my husband, Ethan Carter." Silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. Camilla dropped her fork. Harrison narrowed his eyes. "Husband?" Harrison wheezed. "Since when?" "Since this morning," Vanessa said smoothly. "We eloped. We didn't want a circus." Grant walked over to Ethan. He looked him up and down, sniffing the air as if trying to smell the poverty on him. "Carter," Grant said. "I ran a background check on all of Vanessa's associates last week. Your name never came up. Who are you? Who are your people?" Ethan felt the sweat trickle down his back. This was it, the moment he had to lie to the faces of billionaires. He channeled every ounce of anger he had felt at the restaurant with Sarah. He channeled the protective rage of a father. He looked Grant dead in the eye. My people are the ones who built this city, Grant, Ethan said, his voice deep and steady. I'm an architect. In fact, I studied the structural integrity of this estate while we drove up. The load-bearing beam in the west wing is outdated. You might want to fix that before the roof collapses on your inheritance. Vanessa squeezed his hand, suppressing a smile. It was a bluff, mostly, but it sounded authoritative. Grant blinked, taken aback. Harrison let out a dry chuckle. He has teeth. I like that. Sit down, boy. Let's see if you can survive dinner. As they sat, Grant leaned in close to Vanessa, his voice a low hiss that only she and Ethan could hear. Enjoy the game, Vicky, Grant whispered. But I know you. You don't marry for love. I'm going to dig until I find the dirt. And when I do, I won't just destroy him. I'll take the company, and I'll make sure your new husband goes to prison for fraud. Ethan placed a hand on the table. He didn't look at Grant. He looked at Vanessa. Pass the potatoes, darling, Ethan said calmly. But under the table his leg was shaking. He had entered a war zone. And the worst part wasn't the billionaire enemies. The worst part was later that night, when they returned to the penthouse. Lily was asleep. Vanessa took off her heels and looked at Ethan in the hallway. You were amazing today, she said softly. Grant is dangerous, Ethan said. I know. She hesitated. Ethan, about the sleeping arrangements. Lily had a nightmare earlier. She asked if she could sleep in our bed. I told her yes. Our bed? We have to sell it, Ethan. The staff watches us. Grant has spies everywhere. Vanessa looked away, blushing. You sleep on the left? I sleep on the right. No funny business. Understood, Ethan said. But as he lay in the dark that night, the woman who had bought him for a year, lying just inches away, smelling of jasmine and fear, Ethan realized the danger wasn't Grant. The danger was that for the first time in 3 years, he didn't feel alone, and falling in love with his boss was not part of the contract. 3 months into the arrangement, the lines between performance and reality had begun to blur in dangerous ways. Life in the Sterling penthouse wasn't the cold transaction Ethan had expected. It was surprisingly loud. Lily had taken to sliding down the marble hallway in her socks, and to Ethan's shock, Vanessa didn't scold her. Instead, one Tuesday evening, Ethan walked into the living room to find the terrifying heiress of Sterling Industries sitting on the floor wearing a tiara made of construction paper, having a tea party with Mr. Hops. You're home early, Vanessa said, scrambling to her feet, her cheeks flushing pink. She straightened her pencil skirt, trying to regain her composure. I didn't mean to interrupt, Your Highness, Ethan grinned, loosening his tie. He had started consulting for a small architectural firm again, a job he got on his own merit, though he knew wearing a suit provided by Vanessa Sterling didn't hurt. Lily was just telling me about school, Vanessa said, avoiding his eyes. She needs help with her science project. Bridges. Bridges? Ethan's eyes lit up. Well, you have 2 experts in the house, one who builds them and one who pays for them. That night, they stayed up until 2 a.m., building a suspension bridge out of popsicle sticks and dental floss. For the first time, Ethan saw Vanessa not as the Ice Queen, but as a woman desperate for the childhood she never had. They laughed when the glue stuck to Ethan's fingers. They debated the load-bearing capacity of a toothpick. When Lily finally fell asleep on the rug, Ethan carried her to bed. When he came back, Vanessa was staring out the floor-to-ceiling window at the city lights. You're a good father, Ethan, she said softly. You're a natural, Vanessa. You don't have to pretend with her. I always have to pretend, she whispered, the sadness in her voice cracking the veneer. If I show weakness, Grant pounces. If I show emotion, my father thinks I'm hysterical. You're the only one who sees me. Ethan stepped closer. The air between them was charged, heavy with the unspoken. He reached out, brushing a stray hair from her face. Then let them look. I know who you are. He almost kissed her. He wanted to, but the ring of her cell phone shattered the moment. It was Grant. "Turn on the TV," Vanessa said, her face paling as she listened to her stepbrother. Ethan grabbed the remote. The local news was on. A reporter was standing in front of the construction site where Ethan used to work. "Scandal at Sterling Industries," the reporter announced. "Sources allege that the new husband of heiress Vanessa Sterling isn't the high-flying consultant he claims to be. Just 3 months ago, Ethan Carter was a foreman at this very site, drowning in debt. Is this a Cinderella story or a corporate fraud?" Vanessa dropped the phone. "He leaked it. Grant leaked it to the press." "They know I was poor," Ethan said, his stomach churning. "So what? Being poor isn't a crime." "In my world it is," Vanessa said, her eyes hardening again. "It's not about the money, Ethan. It's about the lie. We told the board you were an independent consultant. If they find out we lied about your background, they'll dig into the marriage. If they prove the marriage is a sham, I lose the company. My father will disown me." "So we fix it," Ethan said firmly. "We don't hide. We double down." "How?" "The Winter Gala is this Saturday," Ethan said. "Everyone will be there. The press, the board, your father, Grant. We walk in there, and we don't act like a woman and her hired charity case. We act like a power couple. I'll handle the press. You handle your father." "And what if we fail?" "Then I lose everything," Ethan said. "But you kept your promise to Lily, so I'll keep my promise to you." The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel was a sea of velvet, diamonds, and sharks. When Ethan and Vanessa arrived, the flashbulbs were blinding. Ethan wore a tuxedo that cost more than his father's house. Vanessa wore a gown of midnight blue silk that clung to her curves like water. She looked regal, but Ethan could feel her hand trembling on his arm. "Chin up," he whispered. "They can smell fear." They entered the room. Conversation stopped, eyes darted. Whispers hissed behind champagne flutes. Grant was waiting near the bar, a smug grin plastered on his face, and standing next to him, clutching a glass of Prosecco, was Sarah, the woman from the blind date. Ethan's jaw tightened. Grant had really done his homework. "Ethan!" Sarah trilled, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. She walked over, her eyes raking over his tuxedo, hunger replacing the disgust she had shown 3 months ago. "I didn't realize you moved in such circles. You look expensive." "Sarah," Ethan said, his voice flat. "You look the same." "Grant was just telling me how you two met," Sarah said, stepping too close, placing a hand on Ethan's chest. "It's so romantic." "Though I was confused. Didn't we have a date the night you met her?" She said it loud enough for the nearby board members to hear. Vanessa stepped forward, her hand tightening on Ethan's arm. "Ethan has many admirers, Sarah. I'm just the one who was smart enough to keep him. Now, if you'll excuse us." She tried to pull Ethan away, but Grant blocked their path. "Not so fast, sis," Grant sneered. He signaled to an older man with white hair, Harrison Sterling. Vanessa's father approached, leaning heavily on his cane, his face thunderous. "Is it true?" Harrison barked, ignoring the guests staring at them. "Grant says this man is a pauper, a laborer you picked up off the street to trick me." "Father, that's absurd," Vanessa started. "I have the bank records," Grant announced, pulling a folded paper from his jacket. "Ethan Carter, foreclosure notice dated December 24th. Account balance, $12. He's a con artist, Dad, and she's in on it." The room went deadly silent. Sarah smirked, looking at Vanessa with triumph. Ethan looked at the paper. He looked at the faces of the elite, judging him. He felt the shame rising, hot and suffocating. Then he looked at Vanessa. She looked terrified, not for her money, but for him. She was stepping in front of him, trying to shield him from her father's wrath. That was when Ethan realized he wasn't playing a role anymore. Ethan gently moved Vanessa aside and stepped toward Harrison Sterling. He didn't look down. He didn't apologize. "It's true," Ethan said. His voice carried across the silent ballroom. The crowd gasped. Grant laughed. "I was broke," Ethan continued, his voice steady. "I was drowning in debt from my late wife's medical bills. I was working 12-hour shifts in the freezing cold to buy my daughter food. I had $12 to my name." He looked at Sarah. "I went on a date that night with a woman who judged me by the shoes on my feet. She treated my daughter like a nuisance." He turned back to Harrison. "And then I met your daughter. Vanessa didn't see a pauper. She saw a man who was fighting for his family. She saw potential. You ask if I'm a laborer? Yes, I build things. I fix things that are broken. And for the last 3 months, I've been helping build something with Vanessa that is stronger than any stock price." Ethan took Vanessa's hand. "You can strip me of the suit. You can check my bank account. But you cannot tell me I am not worthy of her, because I am the only man in this room who loves her for who she is, not for the inheritance she comes with." Vanessa stared at him, tears shimmering in her eyes. It wasn't the script, it was the truth. Harrison Sterling stared at Ethan. He looked at Grant, who was fuming. He looked at the foreclosure notice. "You admit you were poor?" Harrison grunted. "I admit I struggled," Ethan said, "but I'm not struggling anymore, because we are a team." Harrison looked at Vanessa. "Is this true? Do you trust him?" Vanessa squeezed Ethan's hand so hard her knuckles turned white. "With my life, Daddy. He's the best man I've ever known." Harrison paused. The tension was unbearable. Then the old man let out a sharp, bark-like laugh. He ripped the paper from Grant's hand and tore it in half. "Good," Harrison said. "I was tired of you dating those spineless trust fund idiots anyway. A man who knows how to work? Finally." He poked Grant in the chest with his cane. "Stop embarrassing the family, Grant. Go get a drink." Grant turned purple. Sarah shrank back into the crowd, humiliated once again. The orchestra began to play. Ethan pulled Vanessa onto the dance floor. "You're insane," she whispered, a tear finally escaping. "You went off script." "I meant every word," Ethan said, pulling her close. The music swelled. They danced, and for the first time, it wasn't for the cameras. Ethan looked down at her lips. Vanessa looked up. Her breathing hitched. He lowered his head. She rose to meet him. The kiss was electric. It was soft, then desperate. It was the seal on a promise that went far beyond a contract. But as they pulled apart, breathless and smiling, Ethan saw a man in a dark suit tap Vanessa on the shoulder. It was her personal assistant, face pale. "Miss Sterling," the assistant whispered. "It's Lily. The nanny just called. She's being rushed to the hospital. Something is wrong with her heart." The hospital lights were harsh, a cruel contrast to the soft glow of the ballroom chandeliers. Ethan sat in the plastic chair, head in his hands. His tuxedo jacket was draped over Lily, who was asleep in the hospital bed. It wasn't her heart. It was a severe allergic reaction to a new snack, compounded by a panic attack. She was safe, but fragile. Vanessa stood by the window, still in her gala gown, arms crossed. She had been on the phone with doctors, specialists, ensuring Lily had the best care in the world. But the mood in the room was fractured. "Grant knows," Vanessa said quietly. She didn't turn around. "Knows what?" Ethan asked, exhausted. "He knows about the contract. He found the draft in my lawyer's digital files while we were at the hospital. He sent it to my father 10 minutes ago." Ethan stood up. "So we tell him the truth. We tell him it started as a contract, but it changed." Vanessa turned around. Her face was a mask of stone. The vulnerability from the dance floor was gone, locked away behind the fortress walls. "It can't change, Ethan," she said coldly. "What are you talking about after tonight? After what happened on that dance floor?" "Tonight was a performance. A very good one," Vanessa lied. Her voice shook, but she forced the words out. "But the reality is, my father is furious. He's threatening to cut off funding for the pediatric wing of this hospital if I don't annul the marriage immediately. He thinks I made a fool of him." "I don't care about the funding. I care about us. Ethan stepped toward her. There is no us, Vanessa snapped, backing away. Look at you, Ethan. Look at where we are. My world is toxic. Grant will never stop. He will dig and dig until he destroys you. He'll go after Lily next. He'll find a way to take her from you, to hurt me. Ethan froze. Are you threatening me? I'm saving you, Vanessa said, her voice breaking. She reached into a purse and pulled out an envelope. This is the check. $2 million, plus a bonus. Take Lily. Take the money. Go somewhere Grant can't find you. Start your firm. Be the father she deserves. Vanessa. Get out, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Please, just get out before I change my mind and drag you down with me. She was pushing him away to protect him. Ethan knew it, but the rejection cut deeper than the cold wind on Christmas Eve. He looked at the check. He looked at Vanessa, who refused to meet his eyes. Ethan picked up the check. He tore it into 4 pieces and let them fall to the sterile hospital floor. I didn't marry you for the money, Vanessa, he said softly. And I'm not leaving because you told me to. I'm leaving because you still think you can buy people. You're the poorest person I know. He scooped Lily up in his arms, wrapped her in his jacket, and walked out of the room. Vanessa sank to the floor amidst the torn paper, burying her face in her hands, sobbing until her chest ached. The silence in the Sterling penthouse was not peaceful. It was predatory. For 30 days, Vanessa Sterling had lived in a vacuum of her own making. In the wake of the hospital confrontation, she had done exactly what she was bred to do. She had won. With a ruthless efficiency that terrified even her father, she had dismantled Grant's power base. She had exposed his embezzlement scheme involving the shell companies in the Cayman Islands, presented the evidence to the board, and watched with a stone-cold expression as security escorted her stepbrother out of the building. Grant was gone. Harrison had retreated to the estate in the Hamptons, finally acknowledging Vanessa as the sole, capable heir. The stock price was at an all-time high. She was the undisputed Queen of New York, and she had never wanted to die more than she did right now. It was Christmas Eve. Again. 1 year ago to the day, she had walked into a bistro and bought a husband. Now she stood by the floor-to-ceiling glass of her living room, looking down at the snow-dusted city that felt like a graveyard of memories. She turned away from the window. The penthouse was pristine. The maids had scrubbed away every trace of Ethan and Lily. There were no muddy boot prints in the foyer, no smell of sawdust on the coats, no half-finished drawings of bridges on the kitchen island. But there was one thing she hadn't let them touch. On the coffee table, sitting on a velvet coaster, was the bridge made of popsicle sticks and dental floss. It was gathering dust. One of the suspension cables had snapped. It looked pathetic against the backdrop of Italian leather and chrome, but every time Vanessa tried to throw it away, her hand wouldn't obey her brain. She poured herself a glass of wine. It tasted like vinegar. You won, she whispered to the empty room. You have everything you wanted. But the echo of Ethan's voice in the hospital room haunted her. You're the poorest person I know. The intercom buzzed, shattering the silence. Vanessa flinched, nearly dropping her glass. Miss Sterling! It was the concierge from the lobby. His voice sounded nervous. I apologize for the intrusion on a holiday, but there is a situation downstairs. Vanessa pressed the button, her patience fraying. I gave the staff the night off, Henry. Send whatever it is away. I can't, Mum, Henry stammered. It's a delivery. But it's not a package. It's an installation. And the gentleman says he has a permit. He says he's the lead architect on the Sterling renovation project. Vanessa frowned. There is no renovation project. He insists there is, Henry said. He said the foundation is cracking, and if you don't come down to inspect the structural integrity immediately, the whole thing is going to collapse. Vanessa's heart stopped. It didn't just skip a beat. It seized in her chest. Structural integrity. It was the phrase Ethan had used at the dinner table with her father. It was their code. She didn't grab a coat. She didn't check her makeup. She didn't put on the mask of the CEO. She ran to the elevator and punched the button for the lobby, her breath coming in shallow, ragged gasps. As the numbers counted down, 40, 39, 38, she told herself to be furious. She told herself to scream at him for coming back after she had been cruel enough to drive him away. But when the doors slid open, the fury evaporated. The lobby of the Sterling building was usually a cold, imposing cavern of marble and gold. But tonight, it had been transformed. A crowd had gathered. The night security staff, a few late-working employees, and delivery couriers were all standing in a wide circle, phones out, recording. In the center of the atrium, directly beneath the massive crystal chandelier, stood a house. It wasn't a real house, but it was too large to be a toy. It was a 4-foot-tall architectural masterpiece, constructed entirely out of gingerbread, graham crackers, and spun sugar. Vanessa walked forward, her heels clicking on the marble, the crowd parting for her. She got closer and realized the level of detail was insane. It wasn't just a generic house. It was a replica of the Brooklyn brownstone she had once pointed out to Ethan in a magazine, a fixer-upper she had wistfully said looked like a real home, unlike her glass tower. The gingerbread house had illuminated windows made of yellow hard candy. It had a chimney-puffing cotton candy smoke, and standing on the front porch of the cookie house were 3 marzipan figures, a tall man, a woman with dark hair, and a little girl holding a rabbit. "It's a load-bearing gingerbread," a deep voice said from behind the structure. "The frosting is reinforced with royal icing. It can withstand a hurricane." Ethan stepped out from behind his creation. Vanessa brought a hand to her mouth. He looked different. The exhaustion that had shadowed his eyes for months was gone. He was clean-shaven, his hair trimmed. He wasn't wearing the tuxedo she had bought him, nor was he wearing the tattered work clothes from the blind date. He was wearing a simple, well-fitted pea-coat and a scarf that looked hand-knit. He looked steady. He looked free. And holding his hand was Lily. She looked taller, healthier. Her cheeks were rosy, and she was wearing a bright red coat with fuzzy earmuffs. "Daddy said we had to wait for the inspector," Lily chirped, her voice echoing in the large space. She spotted Vanessa, and her face lit up. "Vanessa, did you see? We made a house! I ate the first door, so we had to make another one." Vanessa felt tears prickling her eyes, hot and fast. She tried to speak, but her throat closed up. Ethan let go of Lily's hand and stepped over the velvet rope, closing the distance between them. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough for her to smell the faint scent of cinnamon and sawdust that clung to him, but far enough to respect the boundary she had drawn in the hospital. "What are you doing here, Ethan?" Vanessa managed to whisper. "I told you to go. I told you to take the money." "I know," Ethan said. His voice was low, intimate, ignoring the dozens of people watching them. "And I listened to the first part. I went. I took Lily, and we moved into a small place in Queens. I got a job, Vanessa. A real one. Lead architect for the new public library downtown. They liked my designs. They didn't care about my bank account." That's wonderful," Vanessa said, and she meant it. "So why are you here? If you're back on your feet, why come back to the place that treated you like a transaction?" "Because of the second part," Ethan said. "You told me to take the money. $2 million. It would have solved every problem I ever had." He reached into his coat pocket. Vanessa braced herself, expecting him to pull out the torn pieces of the check, or perhaps a legal summons. Instead, he pulled out a small, crumpled piece of paper. It was a napkin. The cheap, white paper napkin from Le Miroir, the bistro where they had met exactly 1 year ago. He unfolded it. On it, in blue ink, was a sketch. It wasn't a building. It was a drawing Ethan must have made months ago. A sketch of Vanessa sleeping on the sofa with Lily, with the words worth more than gold scrawled underneath. I didn't take the money, Ethan said, his voice gaining strength, projecting so the crowd could hear. Because you can't pay a man for loving you. That's not a job, Vanessa. That's a privilege. Vanessa trembled. It was a contract, Ethan. It was a lie. We lied to everyone. To the press, to my father, to the world. Maybe it started as a lie, Ethan admitted. He took a step closer. Maybe we were just two desperate people trying to survive Christmas. You needed a shield. I needed a lifeline. But tell me, Vanessa, when we built that bridge on your living room floor, was that a lie? When you held my daughter while she cried over a scraped knee, was that a lie? When we danced at the gala, and you looked at me like I was the only man in the room, was that a lie? No, Vanessa sobbed, the word tearing out of her. It was the only real thing in my life. Then stop acting like this is a business deal, Ethan yelled, his composure finally cracking, revealing the passionate desperation underneath. I don't care about Sterling Industries. I don't care about Grant or the board or the inheritance. I care that you are standing in a tower all by yourself on Christmas Eve while I am out here aching for you. He gestured to the gingerbread house. I can't give you a penthouse, Vanessa. I can't give you private jets or galas. I'm an architect on a city salary. I have debt. I have a kid with holes in her tights. But I can build you a home. A real one. One where the walls don't have ears and the dinner table isn't a battlefield. He got down on one knee. The lobby gasped. Phones were raised higher. Ethan didn't pull out a diamond ring. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring made of twisted copper wire, something he had likely fashioned on a construction site. It was rough, industrial, and unpolished. I'm applying for the position again, Ethan said, looking up at her with eyes that burned with sincerity. But the terms have changed. No expiration date, no salary, no non-disclosure agreements. Just us, until the wheels fall off. Ethan! Vanessa was crying openly now, the mascara running down her cheeks, ruining the perfect image of the CEO. She didn't care. Vanessa Sterling, Ethan said, will you fire me as your fake husband, and will you hire me as your real one? Vanessa looked at him. She looked at Lily, who was bouncing on her toes, giving 2 thumbs up. She looked at the copper ring. For 30 years, Vanessa had been taught that value was determined by the market, by assets, by leverage. In 1 minute, Ethan Carter had destroyed that entire belief system. She dropped to her knees. She didn't care about the marble floor ruining her silk dress. She knelt right there in front of him, bringing herself to his level. I have a counter-offer, she whispered, her voice shaking with laughter and tears. Ethan smiled, that crooked, warm smile that made her knees weak. I'm listening. We sell the penthouse, she said. I hate it. It's cold and it's lonely. We sell it, and we buy that fixer-upper in Brooklyn, the one with the bad plumbing and the good bones. Deal, Ethan said, and, she added, reaching out to cup his face, you have to promise me that we never, ever eat at Le Miroir again. Done, Ethan laughed. Vanessa didn't wait for him to put the ring on. She grabbed the collar of his coat and pulled him crashing into her. The kiss was not polite. It wasn't the chaste, staged peck they had shared at the courthouse, nor was it the performative romance of the gala. This was messy, desperate, and overwhelmingly real. It tasted of salt from her tears and sugar from the air. It was a kiss that poured months of longing and fear into a single moment of absolute surrender. The lobby erupted. The security guards were clapping. The delivery guys were cheering. Henry the concierge was wiping his eyes with a handkerchief. Ew! Lily yelled, covering her eyes but peeking through her fingers. You guys are mushy. Ethan broke the kiss, resting his forehead against Vanessa's. He was breathless. Is that a yes? Yes, Vanessa breathed. 1,000 times yes. Ethan took her hand and slid the copper ring onto her finger. It sat next to the multi-million-dollar diamond she usually wore, and somehow the copper outshined the stone. It looked like it belonged there. He stood up and pulled her to her feet. Vanessa felt light, as if the weight of the Sterling legacy had finally been lifted off her shoulders. "Daddy!" Lily ran over and hugged Vanessa's legs. "Does this mean we get to live together? Does Vanessa have to learn how to make pancakes? Because she's really bad at it." Vanessa laughed, picking Lily up. The little girl felt solid and warm in her arms, an anchor in the best possible way. "I promise I'll learn, Lily, or I'll just let your dad cook." "Smart management decision," Ethan quipped. Vanessa turned to Henry, who was beaming behind the desk. "Henry," she commanded, her voice strong but filled with a new warmth. "Call the maintenance crew. Tell them to turn off the lights in the penthouse. I won't be needing it tonight." "Very good, Miss Sterling," Henry nodded. "And where should I forward your mail?" Vanessa looked at Ethan. "Where are we going?" Ethan wrapped his arm around her waist, pulling her close. "Well, my apartment in Queens is small, and the radiator clanks, but we have a very impressive gingerbread house that needs to be eaten." "Sounds perfect," Vanessa said. She turned back to the crowd, to the employees and the strangers who had witnessed the fall of the Ice Queen. "Merry Christmas, everyone," Vanessa said. "Go home to your families." She walked out of the Sterling building, not as the CEO, but as a wife and a mother. They stepped out into the snowy New York night. The wind was still biting, the air was still freezing, but for the first time in her life, Vanessa didn't feel the cold. As they walked down the street, Ethan stopped near a trash can and tossed something in. "What was that?" Vanessa asked. "My contacts list," Ethan grinned. "I don't need to network anymore. I've already landed the biggest project of my life." "Oh? And what's that?" Ethan kissed her temple. "Building a life with you." The three of them disappeared into the swirl of snowflakes, leaving the skyscrapers behind, heading towards the subway, toward Queens, toward a future that wasn't bought, but built. Brick by brick, promise by promise. 1 year later. The Brooklyn brownstone was still a work in progress. There was a ladder in the hallway, and the smell of paint was fresh in the air. But the kitchen was finished. It was warm, chaotic, and smelled of burnt pancakes. Vanessa sat at the island, wearing one of Ethan's flannel shirts covered in flour. She was laughing as Lily tried to scrape a blackened disk of dough off the griddle. "I told you," Lily giggled. "You're bad at this." "I'm getting better," Vanessa protested. "Last week I only set off the smoke alarm twice." The front door opened. Ethan walked in, shaking snow off his boots. He looked tired. The library project was in its final phase. But when he saw them, his face softened into that look that still made Vanessa's heart race. "I come bearing gifts," Ethan announced. He placed a box on the counter. "Is it pizza?" Lily asked hopefully. "Please say it's pizza so we don't have to eat Mummy's pancakes." Vanessa gasped. "Traitor." "Better," Ethan said. He opened the box. Inside was a copy of Architectural Digest. On the cover was a photo of the newly completed public library, but clipped to the front was a smaller photo, framed in silver. It was a picture of the three of them on their wedding day. Their real wedding day, which had taken place in the backyard of this house 3 months ago. No press, no board members. Just Jessica, Henry the concierge, and a justice of the peace. "They wanted to do a feature on the library," Ethan said, walking around the counter to wrap his arms around Vanessa. "But I told them the architect was unavailable for interviews." "Why?" Vanessa asked, leaning back into him. "Because he's busy," Ethan whispered in her ear. "He's working on his masterpiece." "The house isn't done yet?" "Not the house," Ethan said, placing a hand gently on Vanessa's stomach, which was just beginning to show the slightest curve of a baby bump. "The family." Vanessa covered his hand with hers. The copper ring on her finger caught the light of the kitchen. "Merry Christmas, Ethan," she whispered. "Merry Christmas, Mrs. Carter," he replied, and kissed her as the snow fell softly outside, covering the world in a blanket of white, wiping the slate clean for a brand new year. And that is the story of Ethan and Vanessa. From a humiliating rejection in a bistro to a fake marriage that became the most real thing in their lives, they proved that love isn't about bank accounts or bloodlines, it's about who stands beside you when the storm hits. I hope you enjoyed this roller coaster of drama, romance, and karma. If this story touched your heart, please do me a huge favor. Hit the like button and share this video with someone who needs to believe in second chances. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you'll never miss a story. I have a new drama coming next week titled The Billionaire Maid, and you won't want to miss the twist in that one. Thanks for watching, stay safe, and keep loving.